Nick Saban states his case. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We break down the game we all love each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis because of your contribution. We appreciate all that you do here at the Voice of College Football. Nick Saban just appeared on Fox Sports during halftime of the Michigan-Purdue Big Ten Championship game. Wolverines lead at 14-13. All right, Nick Saban said, final statement. He said this at the beginning, then he said it at the end. This was to drive it home. He said, let's get the best teams in this year. Okay. Nick Saban knows with that statement that most people, even if they don't like Alabama, are going to say, yeah, the best teams. Who are the best teams? Regardless of what the wins and losses say, who are the best teams? Well, Alabama is certainly one of the best teams in the country. I would admit that I believe that. Most of you college football fans believe that, regardless of who earned it. So it's the age-old debate, at least the 8 or 9 year debate during the college football playoff era. Who earned it versus who are the best? That's not always the same. It's typically overlaps, but it's not always the same. So for Nick Saban, his points were, first and foremost, and I find this first one amusing, the Vegas favorite. He actually went the Vegas route. And he said this earlier in another interview or news conference after the Auburn game, I believe, that who would Vegas say that the favorite? Now, he didn't mention Vegas, but Vegas is the outfit that obviously determines the favorites and the underdogs. And he said, who's the favorite in these games? We know that the better teams are the favorites. And so that's what he's relying on. And a lot of you college football fans say the same thing to me on a regular basis. You say, we want the favorites to be in there because Vegas knows what they're doing. So the favorites are the better teams. Guess we witnessed that last weekend when Ohio State, the 9-point favorite, lost to Michigan. Okay, the favorite is not always the better team. We need the teams that get the results on the field, that win the games on the field. And we know that Nick Saban, if he was on the other side of this argument, what would he argue? Well, he would say, what does Vegas know about football? Are you kidding me? If somebody responded to him and said, Coach, you probably shouldn't make the college football playoff because you got 2 losses and you would be an underdog against the other 3 or 4 teams in the playoff, he would say, are you kidding me? Vegas is going to tell us who can play football? So that's a convenient argument for him to make. We know from year to year that Vegas base its metrics and its analysis and its point spreads ultimately on, of course, who the best teams are. They generally deliver and present a betting line that is based on the better team versus the inferior team, but it's also based slightly on name brand that Ohio State and Alabama in particular over the past decade to 15 years during the Nick Saban era, Ohio State and Alabama have typically been a decided favorite against just about everybody all the time. Georgia has jumped into that circle in recent years, and Clemson to a certain extent in the past 7 or 8 years as well. But Alabama, Ohio State, they are overwhelming favorites against everyone and have been for quite some time, for the most part. That's a general rule. So that's funny that Nick Saban would go to that argument point. Also, he cited that Bryce Young has been injured. Yes, Bryce Young did not play the latter half of the Arkansas game that got a little bit close, did not play the Texas A&M game that went down to the final play of the game, and Bryce Young has been compromised. So he threw that into the mix, and the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, for better or worse, right or wrong, is supposed to be taking that into account based on their own criteria. Major injuries, but Bryce Young is healthy right now. He, of course, went back to the SEC being a strong league. He did not state that it was the best league. I know that he believes that it is, and it is, but he didn't state that. He just said we play in an extremely strong league. Now, he made a comment that a lot of people don't realize how tough the SEC is. If you watch college football, and especially if you have any say in college football, if you've got a platform like myself or anyone with a larger platform, or you have a vote for anything involving any type of college football awards or rankings or anything, I think you generally are aware of how good the SEC is. Next up, he went to the wins. The wins and the losses. Okay. He went the route of strength. Of course, anybody that argues for a living or wants to make a point is going to go to their stronger arguments. Well, the strength of the argument for Alabama is the losses, actually, and not the wins. The wins are a final point win, final play against Texas, last second field goal in a game in which they were outplayed in Austin and could have easily lost. And actually, if the refs had been doing their job with a safety in the end zone, Alabama probably would have lost against a backup quarterback in Hudson Card who was hobbling all over the field. So actually, if the College Football Playoff Committee wants to look at injuries, they should look at Alabama's performance against a hobbling backup quarterback in a Hudson Card. So that can be used against Nick Saban if the people in the College Football Playoff Selection Committee are smart enough to take that injury debate. If you really want to argue injuries and review injuries, you need to do it in total, not just nitpick here and there. Oh, Caleb Williams, okay, there's an injury. Hendon Hooker, there's an injury. Okay, we're going to take note of a few injuries. No, they need to do their job and review these teams and understand Blake Corum's hurt. Understand that Michigan had multiple injuries coming down the stretch. Ohio State had many injuries coming down the stretch. Its top three running backs did not play in the Michigan game. All those things. If you want to take injuries into account, you need to do it fully, exhaustively, not just, oh, the star's out. We'll take note of that. So, the Texas win compromised because of the starting quarterback Quinn Ewers out, the backup compromised by a bad ankle. Okay. But Nick Saban, again, he understands that the losses are more impressive for Alabama than the wins. They lost on the final play of the game to, as he states, of course, he's going to go with the old rankings, the rankings at kickoff. As he said, we played 3 top 10 teams. Well, 2 of them are no longer in the top 10. LSU faltered, and then Ole Miss faltered. They were 8-1 when they played Alabama in a clear top 10 team, and they did nothing but lose 3 consecutive games after that to fall to 8-4. So Alabama's resume and the wins are Texas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, 3 8-4 teams. Those are the Alabama wins. That's it. The Alabama losses, again, 2 losses are more than 1. Ohio State, TCU, 1 loss. Alabama with 2 losses. So that needs to be first and foremost. The record is not as good as the other teams that they're competing against. I don't think that's the end of the argument, though. Just like we debate no-loss teams against 1-loss teams, there's nothing wrong with debating 1 loss versus 2 losses. But it should at least start with that, and Alabama's behind the 8 ball, in my estimation, my evaluation, based on having 2 losses. Now, they did lose to 2 quality football teams in difficult places to play, Death Valley and Knoxville Neyland Stadium on the final play of the game. So the 2 losses are actually the better resume builder and foundation than the wins against Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Texas. He did take a shot at Ohio State to basically say if you lose in blowout fashion at the end of the season, he didn't use the term blowout, but he said in a large margin that that gives indication that you're not as strong versus playing strong down the stretch. And then, of course, because it fits his argument this season, he took note of and made a point that Alabama's playing good football now, finishing at 3-0. So that's the Nick Saban case. Sorry, Nick, your team's out. It should be out. Should be close, but it should be out at 10-2. Depending on what happens with Michigan here, it typically doesn't matter. It basically doesn't matter except for who wears the home and road jerseys between Michigan and TCU at 2 and 3. Georgia's 1. Michigan, if they win, is 2. TCU is number 3. And Ohio State is number 4. If Michigan loses, you can have a debate between Michigan and TCU as conference championship game losers. But it all depends on what uniforms they want to wear, the home or road. That's all that matters. Alabama, you're out. Enjoy your New Year's 6 game. I guess your Sugar Bowl game against Kansas State as the Big 12 champion. All right. Leave your comments down below right here at the Voice of College Football, and we will talk it up. And we will go live with our watch party. Join us at noon Eastern Time as we watch all together the unveiling of the college football playoff rankings and the Final Four right here at the Voice of College Football.